The Rockpile Report.
Buffalo, New York is going to be the epicenter of every stargazing nerd's wet dream.
With Buffalo Bills season ticket holder, Drew Geter.
If there was ever a time to break out Skyline Chili, it's when the Bills are 5-2, right?
The Rockpile Report. The pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I am your host, Bill season ticket holder Drew Geer. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And if you're here right now listening to this, it's New Year's Day. I bet you, I'm willing to bet that for most of you, the party hat wearing, the, oh my God, I can't wait to sign up for Planet Fitness because this is going to be my year. I want you to ask yourself, does it actually feel any different? Does today feel different than than things did 24 hours ago? I bet you'll find that it doesn't, because it's just another day and another arbitrary date that went by in a calendar. But there is some upshot to New Year's Eve, right? Like New Year's Eve parties. Were you ever a New Year's Eve party kind of guy?
The only holiday that I care about is Thanksgiving. Like New Year's Eve, go fuck yourself. I'm not here for that.
Were you ever?
No,
Okay.
never. Well, we did have when I lived here, we had a thing with the Grecs. Every New Year's Eve, we'd go bowling. So that was up until I was 9. Because I moved the summer I turned 10. But, you know, shout out Bray Millers in Hamburg, 8 lanes, no longer there. Well, I used to go bowling there all the time when I was a kid. But, like, as an adult, I don't give a fuck about New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve was always funny to me because I cared. I used to be the guy who would go out. Guys, you know the I think you should leave sketch? He goes, I used to be a real piece of garbage, you know, white suits. Oh, what did he say? What glass house, white Ferrari, live for New Year's Eve. I used to think it was a real like party occasion. I remember getting all dressed up and going out and doing things, doing things with whoever I was dating at the time. It was always an event. And I think that ever since I met my wife, and maybe even a little bit before that, like New Year's just became like, at what age does it stop even being entertaining? And you go, do I have to stay up for this thing? No. Can I just punt? Like, can I just have a couple strong drinks and fall asleep by 10:30 on the couch? Sounds like the best night ever. Why wouldn't I want that?
I would be shocked if I'm awake at midnight on New Year's Eve. The only reason I could see is what the late game is, 8:45 kickoff, Georgia and Notre Dame. That would be the only reason I would still be awake. But
the college
other than that, I'm not.
Well, and that's the reason I'm asking this question. This whole conversation has led me to this topic. The college football playoff now falling on New Year's Eve and then New Year's Day. The playoff, this isn't just a bowl game. I mean, the playoff usually, a couple years ago, they started putting it on New Year's Eve. And now they've carried over to New Year's Day. And so I find that dynamic incredibly interesting because now I've got something to look forward to. I've got something to drink during, and I've got something that might hold my attention until midnight.
See, I'm locked in on the playoff because it's the first year we're at a 12-team expansion, 12-team playoff. So I'm locked in. Even though the first round was overall shit, there weren't really that many decent matchups.
Oh, you mean it's almost like expanding the field from 4 to 12 and allowing a team. This is my favorite thing that came out of the college football playoff this year. Everybody, trust me, I didn't think Alabama deserved to get in. You don't lose to 2 6-win teams the way that they lost. And also, I kind of was hoping that Kalen DeBoer, missing the playoffs, he'd be one and done. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get that. But this is also what happens when you prioritize teams like SMU and Indiana, who have ridiculously weak strengths of schedule, but the AP voters liked them. And you say, okay, now you're going to go play collegiate blue bloods. It's not going to go well for you. SMU, barely losing their conference championship, now in hindsight says more about the ACC than it says about like them as a school, about them being a playoff team. It's hilarious. And I love that we got that experience, because you know what's going to happen next year, Chris? Mark my words. There will be a team in the exact same scenario as SMU. Made their conference championship. They're a smaller school with less pedigree. And they'll probably deserve it if you're only going by the merits. And they're going to get boxed out by a team like Alabama, because everyone's going to look at it and go, if we can't have another game where it's unwatchable after the first quarter because this small school can't hang. That's it. So good job, playoff selection committee. You showed us all why these smaller schools, when it comes to apples against bigger schools, need to just be put to sleep like Old Yeller. Anyways, New Year's Eve is all of a sudden, and New Year's Day is all of a sudden exciting. There's things to do. There's extra football in our lives. I'm looking forward to it. I love this. I love everything about it. I'm excited. I'm more excited about this than I am about the Buffalo Bills playing a game on Sunday.
You know, I had a conversation with Jessica the other day about Saturday. We went and did she wanted to do like a little bit of shopping, post-Christmas shopping.
Because you know they be shopping.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right. I was like, well.
She's going to get mad.
Yeah. Well, I was like, well, I want to hang out with you. So we'll go. So we get back at the house at like 2:00. So we unload the things that we bought. And as soon as we walk in the house, remote on NFL Network, I got football on. And then I split between the USA World Junior game in the late afternoon and the Bengals and Broncos game, and then I watched most of the night game. And Jessica was like, I don't know how you watch that much sports in one sitting. I'm like, it's because I got a male brain.
You're like, listen.
We're very simple. But that game, the first game, that 1:00 game, incredible to watch. Incredible TV as a Bills fan and being a petty motherfucker. That game took me back to being like 7, 8 and having my first ever like sports conversations in elementary school where the Patriots are why are you talking about the Patriots? They're shit. They've always been shit, and they will always be shit. And it was a glorious watch, and I'm glad we get to play them again.
So, guys, we're going to launch right into it. After we've bored you with our sports talk, it was a great weekend of football. The wild card picture got murky. We're here to talk about all of it. But I guess before we can get to the wild card situation, we got to talk about this Patriots game. So, with that, I'll give you your Week 18 preview. The Buffalo Bills versus the New England Patriots. Your time, thank God, it's 1 p.m. Eastern Standard. I believe we have the CBS. Chris, how many other contending, like, do we have any information on the broadcast windows?
No, they're not usually out Monday, but
the place...
It's like this is one of those games where it's only going to be on in New York State and in the New England area. And it's one of those games where if you're CBS and you got somebody in the can that you're like, oh, I want to see if this person's going to be a good analyst or a good play-by-play guy because everybody's playing. You throw them in at a game that's only in certain small regions. Because if you remember a couple years ago, Green Bay and Detroit, this is when Detroit was bad. That game was on Fox. Fox threw out as a game analyst Pat McAfee.
I remember this.
So this Buffalo-New England game sounds like something where you could get a new broadcaster, whether it's an analyst or a play-by-play guy, in to see if they're worth a contract for next season. But I wouldn't expect
that almost seems more interesting than the game itself.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect this game to be shown anywhere outside of Western New York and the New England region.
Which makes this a banner day for anybody who's willing to pay for Red Zone or sometimes flies a pirate flag. The weather doesn't matter. The line, not even going to bother looking it up. Injuries, who cares?
Buffalo -3.
Awesome. Even they're like,
and there's 5 games on CBS, or at least because CBS is often looked at as being the home of the AFC.
Yeah.
So there's five AFC games in the 1 o'clock window. I mean, I don't know who this is. This is a Tom McCarthy game or a who's that broad? Beth Mowins.
Or I get drunk and fall asleep during the middle of it game.
Yeah.
So as we start talking about this, there's a few topics about this game that I do find interesting. And then I swear we'll go talk about something else that is actually relevant to most Bills fans here today. Josh Allen will start the game, according to Sean McDermott. He announced this afternoon during his presser. But I already knew that. I already knew that on Sunday afternoon, right? Because I'm watching the game, right? Like, I understand the sentiment of every Bills fan who wants to see every single rostered player who you might see start a playoff game put into bubble wrap immediately following New Year's Eve and just shoved onto a shelf, not allowed outside until Monday of wildcard week. Understand it. And while the team will take that track with a number of players, the one thing I've always been positive about was that, like death, taxes, and the Dolphins being overrated in the preseason, Josh Allen was always going to play this football game. Now, here's why. They talked about, and Sean McDermott during the broadcast against the Jets game wasn't even over. The Bills hadn't yet clinched the 2 seed. And Tony Romo and Jim Nantz are already talking about this dynamic of how it's hard to keep hyper-competitive guys who have something to play for on the sideline, and how Sean McDermott had admitted that when it comes to Josh Allen. Now, apparently all it takes is Chris being up 33 points. Once you're up 33 points with almost a whole quarter left to play, that's apparently when Josh Allen's willing to take a back seat. They also mentioned that during a recent interview session with pool reporters, he made a point, Josh Allen did, that more so than a lot of the awards he's been talked about and a lot of the accolades that he's been kind of thrown this season with all the records he's set, that one of the things that means the most to him is this consecutive start streak. And rightfully so when you think about what that means. Now, Chris, you look like you had something to say.
Why would you start Josh Allen when you have biscuits and shavers for 69 yards? Why wouldn't you just... How do you not know? You just go for Mitch Biscuits and Tyrell Shavers.
Are you pulling a Charlie Gross on me right now? Sure. Are you like, oh, no, there's a quarterback controversy. We need to talk about this.
Tony Romo said it on the broadcast.
You've gone full Charlie Gross, sir. It's hilarious.
But don't worry, he owns a football analytics company while he also Ubers.
I'll tell you what, if you Google it right now, I bet you that website's still under construction. He said it was going to be up like 4 years ago. Oh, no, we're being mean now. We are the pettiest podcast. I don't forget. I just get more bitter over time. I think that the consecutive start streak is important, right? When you think about what it means for you as a player, it underscores the preparation you put into the NFL game, the work you put into not just your craft, but also into your body and the toughness that's required to achieve that kind of longevity in the NFL. And it's incredibly impressive when you think about what it means for a guy who plays the game as physically as Josh Allen does. To be in this conversation is wild. And so when you think about everything he's overcome, I understand why it's important to him. And I think that it sends the right message to his teammates. It's one of the things that allows him to lead the way that he does, is that no matter what he's going through, it's never enough to keep him off the field. And it's, Chris, when's the last time he didn't finish a game? I think it was that game against the Patriots when he got concussed, right?
Probably.
And then he played the next week.
Yeah.
They ruled him out with a concussion, and then he was back playing the very next week.
He's on what, like 119 games in a row starting.
121 is the number as of today. Now, this is important. There's a couple different ways you come about a record like this. When I think about records like this, I think about Nolan Ryan in baseball. Now, I'm not a baseball fan, but as a little kid, I followed it, collected trading cards, knew a bit, played it, so I knew a bit about it. Nolan Ryan was my favorite player. And yes, it did have something to do with the fact that I got to watch him beat up Robin Ventura. And it was the coolest thing for a little kid to be like watching TV. And here's this old man and this young guy at the plate. And he rushes the mound and just gets put in a headlock immediately. And I go, that old guy's beating that young kid's ass. And it was one of the coolest moments. Like, it's just exciting stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you see this, but then you think about Nolan Ryan. He leads and holds the record still for career strikeouts.
It's not close. That might be a record that doesn't get broken.
It probably won't be, and here's why. Do you know who's in second place, Chris?
I was actually looking at this the other day.
Shouldn't be hard. You think about the greatest pitchers of all time.
I would say Randy Johnson.
Randy Johnson is second in Major League Baseball history.
But it's more than 1,000 strikeouts away.
Almost. So Nolan Ryan has like 830-something strikeouts for his career.
It's like 5,700 and change.
Yeah, no. So 807, he played like 837 games is what it is. He amassed his 5,000 strikeouts over 827 years of baseball. 807, there it is. 807 starts over 27 years. Chris, that's what? You think about 27 years. That means that when I saw him beat up Robin Ventura, he'd been pitching for almost 20 years already.
Yeah.
It's a longevity record. And so even as good as Randy Johnson was, he's 873 total strikeouts behind Nolan Ryan. He played 22 years. The average, Chris, do you know that only 19 pitchers in baseball history, I was looking at it while I was kind of thinking about this for the show, only 19 baseball pitchers have ever gotten 300 strikeouts or more in a single season, which means the average strikeout margin's probably 200 and change, which means Randy Johnson would have had to play for another 5 years to beat Nolan Ryan's record. It's a longevity record. It's something you amass by not only being really good, but also showing you can stay healthy, you take care of your body in the ways you have to in order to continue competing, and that you continue to compete at a high enough level that the league as a whole doesn't put you out to pasture. Chris, think about the quarterbacks that just aged out of the NFL. Ben Roethlisberger is one of these guys, right? Like, you watched his physical gifts just degrade and 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 eventually the whole thing falls apart. And teams everywhere decide, you know what? We're better off going with a journeyman like a Sam Darnold or a Geno Smith than giving you an opportunity.
So how about this? Robin Ventura at the time of the fight, 26 years old. Nolan Ryan at the time of the fight, 46 years old.
That's hilarious. So with this in mind, it's not necessarily a better player statistic. And that's what I like about the longevity records here and consecutive starts and all these things. You have to have played a ton of football in order to qualify for consecutive starts records. And that doesn't just mean, hey, I was a really good quarterback. I was one of the best to ever do it. Chris, if you Google active consecutive start streaks NFL, Wikipedia has a great list of them. And you take a look at who's on there, and some of them you're never going to. There we go. And now filter it by total. Don't look at their rank 1 through whatever, because that's all based on regular season. Go to total over there and just click that column and it should sort. Oh, is your version not sortable? What'd you do?
No.
All right. Well, either way, you look at that. Jim Marshall, right?
Guy that ran the wrong way.
Consecutive games played amongst quarterbacks. That's what it was. That's the one that's sortable. Go ahead and give that a goog. Hang on. List of most consecutive starts by an NFL quarterback. Yeah. Now go sort that by total. when you take a look at that, Brett Favre's number 1, Phillip Rivers number 2, Peyton Manning, you're like, oh, okay, good. Eli Manning is 3rd. Russell Wilson slots in. Matt Ryan is in here. So you're not just talking about the best to ever do it. You're just talking about the guys who did it well enough for long enough that teams are willing to keep them around. Joe Flacco is in this conversation. Okay? But when you take a look at where Josh Allen slots in, he's 13th on the list of consecutive start streaks, and there's no one else who's active inside the top 25. Look at that, Chris. The only player who has an active streak going who's on this list, Josh Allen. And he's already near the top of the list. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep, there we go.
When Tom Brady's 10, 11, and 12.
We're going to talk about that, because guess who he's behind? Buffalo's own Ron Jaworski, who was right here, Lackawanna, New York.
Yep.
Ron Jaworski is the one immediately in front of Josh Allen at 123 consecutive starts. And then Tom Brady, who inexplicably holds spots 11, 10, and 9 for 3 different runs over the course of the Patriots, like, what, Chris, 18-year dynasty?
10, 11, and 12.
10, 11. Well, no, you're looking at the numbers, and that's not, I don't think it reorders those when you, because look, it's out of order if you're looking at total. So that's my point. First of all, credit to Tom Brady for being an NFL starter for long enough. You could have not 1 or 2, but 3 different runs that qualify you for the longest longest active streaks. Think about how many quarterbacks' careers started and ended during Brady's. That's wild. And at 128, and 2 of them at 126, he's only a handful. Like, Josh Allen's right there knocking on the doorstep.
Yeah,
now,
Josh Allen's going to make a jump next season.
Now, having grown up, admittedly being a fan of Tom Brady, as well as being a well-known petty son of a bitch, you have to imagine that Josh Allen would love a few things more than knowing that he leapfrogged Tom Brady. You know, a guy that he grew up really liking as a football player, and putting himself in, just leapfrogging that guy and putting himself into the top 10 for consecutive starts as a quarterback. And barring catastrophic injury, he should do it. I mean, he's going to get at least 2 more starts here in 2024, 2025. If you start next season, he'll have that by what, week 4 or 5?
Yeah, we'll have it early.
And then you take a look farther. At 7th is Matt Stafford with 139 starts that went from 2011 to 2019. Allen could, in theory, surpass him by week 17 of 2025. So with that in mind, there's no way you're going to get Allen to quit on this thing now. He's made it clear it's important to him. I understand why it's important to him as both a leader and just a competitor and a football player and just a really intense human being when it comes to loving what you do on a football field. There's no coach on earth, I think, who could stand between Josh Allen and that record, nor would you want to. So he's going to go out there, take a single series, and call it a day. And God bless him, Chris. Don't you think he deserves it?
Oh, yeah, he 100% does.
Now, as far as who deserves what, there's also the matter of, well, Josh is definitely suiting up. Who else is going to be or should be out there?
Tyrell Shavers.
This is it. I've got a few opinions on that, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do, Chris, because if you go to Our Lads Bills, I want you to see this. I'm already pretty familiar with the roster, but I want you to have it up, and I want you to be able to look at it with me as we talk about this. As we do, you guys got to keep in mind one nuance of how the practice squad works. You only get 2 call-ups per week. So for every fan who's going, let's sit all the starters and just bring up the whole roster and we're going to, you're going to have a problem here this week in that you can only elevate 2 players. Now, according to Our Lads, Tyrell Shavers on the 53. Now, I don't know if that's because of his call-up last week. Chris, if you can give that a goog, I'd be interested to see. Did they call up Tyrell Shavers and actually make him a part of the 53, or was that information just based off of last week's call-up? Either way, you're going to have choices to make. And a lot of the players who, name players, guys you know, they're going to be basically dressed like if you're the offensive line and your starters, if Allen's out there, they're not going to put him behind a bunch of backups unless the plan is for 4 handoffs and then you get the hell out of Dodge. Everybody's inevitably who is a starter is going to come off the field at some point and be replaced by backups and practice squad call-ups. Few of them I expect to see, and a few different reasons. Tylen Grable and Richard Garage at offensive tackle. I expect one of these two guys is going to be active for this game, if only because they cut Eli Anku to keep Tylen Grable, like activate him and get him on the roster. And they had to make a roster spot and send somebody back down to the practice squad. And so with that in mind, you kept this guy at the expense of another player who's an NFL veteran who might be useful in your defensive tackle rotation. My guess is you plan on having him around. Break glass in case of emergency type thing.
Shavers, this is the Patriot game day roster. So Shavers not being listed in wide receivers or under the inactives means he was on the practice squad.
Exactly. So to bring him up again would cost you one of your 2 practice squad call-ups. I believe that Tylen Grable will get an active designation for this game just because you need to get him some actual snaps if you expect him to be anything for you in the playoffs. And Richard Garage, I just want to hear the announcers try to say his name without laughing on air. I also believe that Will Clapp, the center, is going to get a call-up just so that they can take the entire starting 5 of our offensive line and sit them for the entire day.
I mean, this says he was released, but was Will Clapp signed to the practice squad?
I believe so, yes. Now, you're going to have to check that. Somebody's going to have to come up and play center. I can't imagine they're going to go into this game without having anybody play center.
Yeah, he's still there. I think he's on the practice squad.
Yeah. At linebacker, I don't think we're going to see either of Dorian Williams or Matt Milano. I mean, you think about it, they both got nagging injuries. Like, they both were able to come into the Patriots game. Oh, well, Milano wasn't, but Dorian Williams was able to come in and play despite his elbow injury designation.
I'm sorry. I was slightly impressed with Buffalo Joe in trash time against the Jets on Sunday. So
sure,
I am 100% fine him against the Patriots and getting the reps that we need to see from Joe Andreessen.
So you've got a Joe Andreessen and an Eddie Ulofoshio.
Start him.
Now, I think you use both of them, and Ulofoshio is really interesting. He's like our friend and co-host of the Bootleg Football Podcast, DJ Snyder, really high on Ulofoshio coming out of Washington as a developmental off-ball linebacker. Said, look, against the run, he's a work in progress, but his coverage skills are good. You know, as long as you can keep him clean, he can do some nice things for you. Chris, as a 5th-round draft pick, he hasn't seen a single defensive snap this season. Despite playing, when he's active, 60-something% of the snaps on special teams. Considering that this team collects linebacker injuries the way Chris collects bourbon, I just think that they need to get this kid some run. They need to get every linebacker who's been in the system and at least understands the playbook. They got to get him live snaps. You have to. Because the reality is the road to us coming out of the AFC, whether it's making it to a championship game, whether it's making it to a Super Bowl, you will inevitably have to go through some teams that can run the football. You're talking about the Ravens. You're talking about the Chargers. You're talking about the Chiefs now that they have Isaiah Pacheco back. You're going to have linebackers who in a pinch can come in and play for you. You might as well get the kids some chops now and let your starters get some rest, legitimate rest. I also think that at cornerback, you've seen enough from your starters. You don't need Benford. You don't need Douglas. I'm fine if they want to go out there and roll out Jamarcus Ingram, Kyer Elam. They want to let Cam Lewis play nickel corner and sit Teron Johnson.
Ingram. Give me some Ingram.
I'm perfectly fine with all of this. I don't think you need to call anybody up necessarily. You just let the guys who are around, like Chris, scroll down for a second. So you could get away with Jamarcus Ingram, Cam Lewis, Kyer Elam, and I don't know. You've got Brandon Codrington, who's going to be active because he's your kick returner, who he has played mop-up duty defensive snaps.
Yeah, he did on Sunday.
And so,
not so good.
And so then who cares? And so then if you do decide to do that, that means it's going to have an effect on your running back room, right? Because Sean McDermott's already said he doesn't like moonlighting players in multiple positions as quote unquote starters or primary backups, because if you get one injury at either position, now you have two problems. So that means Ty Johnson, who showed up in the fourth quarter of the Bills game this past weekend as our kick returner, is probably active. Now, I don't love that, but the running back room was probably always going to be Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. So this all makes sense. And in that way, if you do that with your cornerback room, you don't have to commit any extra practice squad call-ups to do it. So you have some flexibility with what you want to do in the defensive line, what you want to do in the trenches. Because, Chris, let's face it, the trenches is when we've won games, it's been because we won the trenches. You know, even the Lions game, even as high scoring as it was, we ran the ball, we didn't let them run the ball, and we won a high scoring shootout. That's going to be important, and so you're going to see a bunch of our defensive linemen put in mothballs. Having a free, a practice squad call-up for that position would be helpful. The skill position, though, is interesting. Think about running backs and wide receivers, Chris, because the Bills, the last time we played the Patriots, we had an opportunity to make history, and we couldn't make good on it. We were on pace to set the NFL record for the most consecutive 30-point games in league history, and we failed. We fell short of that mark. 24-21 was the final score of the game. But we can still set another record. We still have a crack at something meaningful.
Is this the amount of chains I'm going to wear?
No. Unfortunately, Mr. T has you beat, but you are flirting. You are flirting, sir. They can get a record for the most unique touchdown receivers in a season. The record is 13, and they're right there.
So we need
one touchdown from a player who hasn't already caught one yet. Somewhere on the roster.
Who?
I've got a list for you, Chris. Don't worry, I've done all the work. Here's a list of the guys who can get the Bills to 14 and get the 2024 Buffalo Bills into the record books for offensive diversity. Tight end Zach Davidson.
Ooh.
Who has just one reception during a season where every idiot with a podcast or Twitter handle tried to tell me that during training camp, this kid's he's gonna be a thing. It's great. He's electric. Yeah, is he? Is he fucking really? I don't want to hear any more about it from you people. I've kept a list. For next training camp, the next time you're all high on some kid who looks great in shorts with no pads, I'm going to remind everyone on this list when I see him tweet about it, I have all their Zach Davidson takes because I'm petty and I'm tired of this shit. Fullback Reggie Gilliam. This is an offense that rarely ever uses an up back. And then when they did try to use him against the Jets, he got stopped for a loss on fourth down. Boo, sledge. What is it? Sledge? My ass. You're more like a ball peen.
To me, Sunday, if you want to lay down a beta bet, Reggie Gilliam.
So this is it.
Anytime touchdown.
We know a guy. Who makes barbecue sauce, who used to run beta bets all the time. Quentin Morris and Reggie Gilliam, anytime touchdown scorers. Even this guy, right? He bailed. It's a dynamic. He bailed, right? And it's hilarious. He has just 2 total touches through 17 weeks of football. Reggie Gilliam does. He's a special teams ace only now at this point in his career. It's Saron Neal-esque. This season will, Chris, be if he doesn't get a single passing target, it'll be the first time it's happened in his entire NFL career. And it will signal that the roster has evolved to a place where we no longer need a fullback in the passing game whatsoever. Now, maybe that dynamic changes. Maybe there's plays designed specifically for him in the playbook that Joe Brady's been hiding up his sleeve waiting for the playoffs. But the fact that Gilliam has disappeared from the playbook altogether, I think speaks more to the running back room and just how multifaceted that player group has become, and just how well the Bills operate out of single back sets, that they don't need a fullback.
We're still going to need him if we want to have a Raising Cane's franchise. Gilliam and Ferguson.
Raising Cane's, Reggie Gilliam on the roster. I mean, you're killing me, Smalls. Wide receivers, Jalen Virgil and KJ Hamler. Those are two guys, but I don't know what they're worth. KJ Hamler hasn't played a game this season. He can't get on the field. Even when we had injuries at wide receiver, he couldn't get on the field. What does that tell you about where they see him? Jalen Virgil was active. He has no targets. None. Not a single one. Now, maybe he's got some mystery chemistry with Mitch Trubisky that we know nothing about.
Not like Shavers.
I've got a take on that, by the way. And then running back Frank Gore Jr. He's the only other person who can set this record. And given the inevitable benching of Cook, I'd like to think that your running back room is going to be Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. But from a numbers perspective, they probably don't want another running back out there. They'd probably want to call up another D-end and sit Greg Rousseau, sit Von Miller, promote. Chris, look at this. You're going to have give Javon Solomon some more run. How do you make a D-end room for this weekend, Chris? You're probably going to play a lot of Smoot. You're probably going to die over there behind the microphone, choking on whatever you're drinking in that fruity-looking glass. You're probably going to give Javon Solomon a significant number of snaps. Dwayne Smoot's going to get a lot of snaps. I expect to see. Does AJ Epinesa qualify as a player that you would want to kind of give a rest in a game like this?
This was a thrift store find, and it has the letter K on it.
K, okay. K for Kruger.
Yeah.
So you feel fancy as hell drinking out of it?
It's a thrift store find. These were 79 cents a glass.
You and Macklemore just going to the thrift store, trying to seem fancy. All right. And you both have stupid haircuts. Your new nickname's Macklemore. We're done here. I just look at all the other places they could spend their practice squad call-ups. The fact that almost everybody we've mentioned isn't a member of the Standard 53 shows you how creative Joe Brady's been in manufacturing what has been the second most devastating offense in the NFL from a scoring perspective through 17 weeks. You've gotten here with bits and pieces, and you've used every single weapon in the cupboard. You found a way to make it relevant to the point where you're looking at your roster going, can I find somebody else who hasn't scored a touchdown? And then you're scratching your head going, maybe this one guy, but he sucks. He's like Chris and I, but I guess we could put him out there and throw the ball to him a dozen times and see if one of them accidentally finds the end zone. Joe Brady has done a killer job this year, and that's why we're having this conversation in the first place. Also, you probably don't want either Knox or Kincaid seeing the field in this game, right, Chris?
I can do with Knox.
See, I don't, because the one thing that sucks about Knox, he drops a ton of stuff. He has concentration mistakes in the open field, and that's why he's never had much yards after the catch. He's never been seen as like a real seam threat in the NFL.
All right, well,
touchdowns.
Let's work on it this week.
The dude scores touchdowns in spades. It's the reason he got paid. His contract is because nobody has produced the scoring and the touchdowns that this guy does at the tight end position over the course of his career. He's dangerous in the red zone because he's big, he's physical, he gets north and south really fast. He's just not super fast. He doesn't run good routes. He doesn't separate. He doesn't catch the ball all that well. But you still want him. So in this game, you could call up a Zach Davidson, put him alongside Quentin Morris, just run a bunch of wide, depending on what you do at wide receiver. Scroll up. It's probably going to be a lot of Tyrell Shavers. You're going to see if they call him up. I'm assuming Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, just because he's a rookie, even though I'd argue, because you can't bench everybody, right? Mac Hollins is probably going to have to play. I don't know. I think you put Amari Cooper on the bench. I think you bench Khalil Shakir, don't you?
Yeah. Don't the Patriots, aren't they playing for the first overall pick?
I don't know. Someone would have to fact check that. Call in if you know. If Zach Davidson is the call up, though, super athletic, apparently, tight end. Wouldn't you feel good about him being the one who might be able, with his size at 6'5", knowing that he's more of a receiver than a true blocking or like multifaceted tight end?
There you go.
Okay. It would be theirs if they lose to the Buffalo Bills at home on Sunday. Okay. So they're playing for the number 1 pick in the draft. All right.
Also known as trading back.
So they've got a little incentive. The coaching staff on the other side of the ball has a little bit of reason to not be all that competitive. Do we feel good if Zach Davidson's the call-up that he might be the one to help us set the record?
Please and thank you.
If he does it, I will cut the amount of vitriol I'm going to have next training camp for everybody who comes to the table with some guy who looks really good and who we all know is going to go on to do fuck all. I will cut my vitriol in half. Zach Davidson, if you can just do this one thing for me. Just go out there and get me a touchdown so we can put this offense into the record books. And then just take that and I can take screen caps of it and get blocked on just how like ESPN's Bill Barnwell has us blocked on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I will just take that and I will just tweet it at Emmanuel Acho every day until he blocks us.
I'm for that. I also, I'll do this. If you can join me if you want. If the record's broken on Sunday and it's broken by Davidson, I'll drink a Ryan Rhodes Seagram's.
Woo! There we go. I'll take that. In fact, I'll do one with you.
There you go.
All right, sir. See, Zach, it's on you now. And also, Mayo, he's coaching for the number 1 pick in the draft, but it might not be him who gets to spend it. He's probably also kind of coaching for his job. Yeah,
It's shocking.
The Crafts gave him a vote of confidence, but Chris, he gets blown out 40-7.
It was a great watch.
Now all of a sudden there's rumors that Mike Vrabel would strongly consider the Patriots, especially seeing Drake May. You've got the quarterback position figured out. There's a guy like, if you were to have an availability, maybe Ben Johnson goes, wait, you mean I could have a bunch of picks at my disposal? A guy who looks pretty legit at quarterback. All of a sudden that the New England job becomes attractive. If you come out another straight week and fall on your face, not just get beat, but fall on your face to another team's backups, I feel like you as the Patriots have to consider moving on.
New England would be considered one of the top jobs if they get the number 1 pick, because your ability to trade that to the Giants, who need a quarterback, or insert other team that needs a quarterback, you're able to collect picks. Drake May seems to be the guy. It makes it a top job if New England gets the number 1 pick.
So Mayo is coaching for his job right now. I firmly believe that. No matter how much we have the utmost faith, because they want him to fight for it. And if he doesn't, then fuck him. He doesn't deserve to be there, because they know that they have a pedigree of winning and Robert Kraft isn't getting any younger. He wants this team to be better sooner rather than later. That's what led to the divorce with Belichick. You can say that you made a mistake. I mean, guys, the teams have gone one and done before. The Arizona Cardinals did it. They did it with Josh Rosen and the coach that helped pick him. Chris, did you know Josh Rosen is right now an MBA candidate at Wharton University?
That makes sense.
He got thrown out of the NFL so hard that he went back to college. I wonder if he has any NCAA eligibility left.
He could. I mean,
I just think of the movie Back to School. Little Rob.
I mean, I am one of those people that will tell you that I don't think Josh Rosen got his fair shake at a starting job.
Dude, he got enough of a shake that the Browns brought him into their organization, and they didn't just bench him, they put him under the jail. He was like a 4th string quarterback for the Browns. The Browns, Chris. It's where quarterbacks go to die. Perfect example, Deshaun Watson.
I mean, he went to get a massage. That's where he died.
So with that said, I expect to see something from someone on Sunday. It's going to be a no-stress watch. I'm going to love every second of it. I just hope we get this record. And that's mostly because we locked up the spot. Now, as we switch gears to playoff talk as we end the show, the NFL wildcard picture is still undefined. And so while our team is cooling their heels, there's still a whole bunch of things that are left in the air, right? Because the AFC North title isn't decided, which means both teams are going to have to play their A game. Starters are going to be playing for both the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, mind you, the Steelers, I think, have the much bigger challenge in front of them, right?
Sure.
Playing Cincinnati, the way Cincinnati's playing, they're kind of on a heater offensively, at least. And meanwhile, the Ravens draw the Browns. And if the Ravens win, they're just in. Like, they win, they take the AFC North.
Guess the spread. Browns-Ravens.
Oh, my God. It's got to be double digits.
Give me a number.
13.5.
Ravens minus 17.5.
That's a fucking college spread. What are we talking about here? Now, guys, take Cleveland with the points.
I would 100% do that.
Oh, my God. So all of this, though, who the Bills play, like, there's still a lot to be settled. But who the Bills play being up in the air all comes down to a couple things. First of all, and there's a lot of nuance here that I think is really funny. First of all, what the fuck were the Broncos doing on Saturday? Chris, what are we talking about here? How did you piss that game away?
I have no idea. But from a Bills perspective, I would love to see the Broncos in the first round, given Sean McDermott's track record against a rookie quarterback.
We're going to get our way there to why they're my favorite, but let's talk about this just as we kind of get into the conversation. What they did was appalling. Every reason that we want them as an opponent was on display, right? No everyone scoffs when Sean McDermott says complimentary football. Oh, you got to play complimentary football. They had none. Their defense showed up for the entire first half and was trying to do its job. Over the course of the defense, basically, like, the offense came out, scored, and then the defense forced Cincinnati to punt multiple times. You know what they did with that, Chris? 3 plays for 9 yards and a punt. 5 plays for 19 yards and a punt. 6 plays for 6 yards and an interception. 3 plays for 2 yards and a punt. That's hilarious. I thought Bo Nix I thought he was great, and I thought Sean Payton was a genius. Except when it comes to point after attempts, I guess. That's the other thing. For Bo Nix is still very much a rookie quarterback. You saw a lot of that decision-making on display. You saw a lot of things from the team as a whole on offense, their inability to run the ball with any real effectiveness. I like that. I also love the fact that we got to see Sean Payton kind of show his ass in a handful of moments where I'm like, oh, I thought this guy was supposed to be some kind of genius. Well, what the fuck was that decision? None bigger than the decision to kick the field goal and then defend it afterwards, even though every single analytic, which smart guys like him are supposed to believe in, said kick the field goal or said go for 2. And then your quarterback goes, well, I wanted to go for 2, but, coach. Coach said no. So now, Chris, because of their just ineptitude, we're left with an NFL AFC wildcard picture that looks like this. You want to throw that up there on the screen for the people? You see all the teams that have clinched and everybody who's got their affairs in order. You can take it from the top on down. The Bills sitting in second behind the Kansas City Chiefs. Both of them are going to enter week 18 knowing exactly where they stand. Shockingly, the Chargers are kind of landlocked, right? They might go up. In fact, Chris, I don't think they can move, can they?
No.
So they're stuck.
It's either Denver, Miami, or Cincinnati for the 7th seed.
And so you look at the math on this and who the Bills might play. This is where things get crazy because all Denver had to do was win it in. The whole playoff thing could have been set up. And everybody just goes home happy. We know who we're playing. Week 18, no sweat. I've got nothing to watch, so I can just hang out with my kids. maybe have a couple people over, do a little day drinking. I don't know. It would be a fun, relaxing ramp up to Wild Card Weekend. And instead, Denver shits their pants in epic fashion, letting T. Higgins just run wild all over their team, which was good for me because I started him in my fantasy football Super Bowl where I snuck in as a 6th seed, and I'm playing the GM of my company in the Super Bowl, Chris. Nothing would make me happier than beating this guy. Nothing. And I'm an Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta 42-point deficit away from winning the title. So hopefully the Detroit Lions offense doesn't show up tonight. But when you guys look at this chart that's on screen right now, and you take a look at who's where, that loss by Denver left the door wide open for some real chaos. Now, Cincinnati, Chris, were you sweating a little bit Saturday night when you go, fuck, I don't want to play Cincinnati?
No, look, I don't want to play Cincinnati. I don't want to have to play Cincinnati round 1 and then round 2 have to play Baltimore, even though that would be here. I don't want to do Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. That is hell's trifecta.
So as it stood, as of Saturday night, there was still some hand-wringing going on in our fan base that you could end up in that universe where you have to play Cincinnati, Baltimore, Kansas City, and that becomes your road to getting to the Super Bowl. Luckily, the events of Sunday mean that a lot of that's irrelevant and no longer worthwhile. And, the Bengals have now fallen to just a 10% chance to make the playoffs. And Chris, nobody feels more heartbroken about it than me. So show people the tweet that I sent you earlier. For those of you watching the audio-only version, you must be a sick MFer rooting against the Bengals, rooting for the Bengals' downfall. And it's just a picture of Kevin, and they're like, it's me. And it's just Kevin Durant in a hospital bed all hooked up to hoses and tubes. Call me sick. Nothing makes me happier than watching the Cincinnati Bengals fail. I don't know why. They're just unlikable. I don't hate them because they're good. Isn't that how the kids call each other haters now? Look, you're just a hater because you don't. No. I was a Tom Brady hater, admittedly. I was a Bill Belichick hater, admittedly. I'll confess to these things. The Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, I am a hater. Now, I also dislike things about their personalities, just their mannerisms away. But also, if they were unsuccessful at their job, I wouldn't have nearly the animosity that I do now. Joe Burrow just rubs me the wrong way. I don't like him. I don't like his attitude. I don't like the fact that he showed up looking like Ellen DeGeneres to start this season. I don't like the fact that he's cocky for no reason in a lot of different scenarios. And it's just really funny to me. And then, of course, there is the bitterness of watching my team constantly fail at their hands. So now we've opened up the door, Chris, to a universe where this dumbass, if you want to throw his face up there for those watching us on YouTube, this dumbass somehow controls the fate of multiple NFL teams. That's right. I'm talking about Carson Wentz. When's the last time you heard that name and it was even relevant in the NFL?
Been a couple of years.
Carson Wentz is going to take the field for the Kansas City Chiefs alongside a cast of backups. If the Broncos can't beat them, then there exists a world where the Buffalo Bills will play the Miami Dolphins for a third time this season. Like right now, they would need Miami to lose to the New York Jets. If Denver can't overcome that guy, that ginger with that stupid face, if they can't overcome the Carson Wentz show, then there exists a world where without Cincinnati losing and without Miami losing, we end up playing the Dolphins again. Our listeners would love having Elf Artiaga back on here again.
100%.
And after wallowing in his own copium for as long as he has this season, Chris, it would very much be like the Bills when they broke the drought, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't have our quarterback for a game and weird things happened and we lost some really ugly football games. games like embarrassing stuff. And then somehow you fell ass backwards into a playoff berth.
Yeah. You love to see it.
Who out of the three, Denver, Miami, or Cincy? Because I'm not going to lie, we talk about how Denver's the one we want. I would love right now at this time of year, with a banged up Tyreek Hill, a banged up Jalen Waddle, a terrible offensive line that was bad when the season started. They just didn't know it yet. What on defense? Multiple starters missing with injury. Their quarterback hurt his hip. Chris, I have a hip injury. How does their starting quarterback also have a hip injury? In practice?
It's football.
You missed a game because you hurt your hip in practice? Good Lord. And I'm supposed to be afraid of that team in the NFL postseason.
I will 100% take a Denver or Miami. I want nothing to do with Cincinnati in the playoffs. I need Denver, Miami for that first round matchup.
I still like Denver just because Miami's running backs have talent, and I think that's what skews this. I think that for as good as you hear talk about Bo Nix and all this passing and the crazy stuff they're doing, our defense is much better, both statistically and by the eye test, than the Cincinnati Bengals. So the stuff they got away with on Saturday, you'd like to think you wouldn't see that happen to our team. I think that our pass rush probably isn't as good. Trey Hendrickson's really talented, and Sam Hubbard's really good. They've got a decent D-line. I think that we match up better against a team that almost makes itself one-dimensional. They don't run the ball well. Miami has really talented running backs. Denver is talented-ish, and they don't commit to it enough for it to be a factor in a lot of their games. Mostly because they don't do it well, and their coach seems to outsmart himself in that way. I would much rather play a team like Denver, who makes mistakes and gets sloppy with the football mostly because of their quarterback's youth, and also who, again, by their own design, becomes one-dimensional, rather than have to see another team for a third time in a season, Chris, who they've got tape on you. They know you. You're familiar with them. We saw it last week against the Patriots. Divisional games get weird. The last thing I want is anything getting weird in an NFL playoff game, right? No, I think you root for Denver to find a way to beat that goofy ginger over there and all these Chiefs fans. Like, it's going to be in Denver. It's going to be at home. Hopefully the Denver stadium is rocking and they find a way to bring this thing home, because I'll tell you, man, things will get real weird. And then if Miami can't beat the Jets, what if Tyrod Taylor gets the start for the Jets this week?
They ain't winning.
Tyrod Taylor against a not 100% Tua Tagovailoa and that Miami team? I don't know. I don't know that they're a shoe-in to win that game. I mean, they struggled with the Browns. It was, 6-3 at halftime?
Something like that.
The Dorian Thompson-Robinson led Browns?
Yeah.
It's a hell of a thing. I'm interested to see how it plays out. I just know that we're locked in and we can sit back and watch this one with our feet up. And that feels pretty good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, this has been a lot of fun. Hopefully you relax on this Week 18 weekend. Hopefully Zach Davidson shows up and puts Buffalo into the record books and hopefully we can avoid the Cincinnati Bengals. For tonight, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rock Pile Report.